John, what's up, man?
Not much. Glad to be here.
Here we are, the whole elephant. You dressed up for me today.
I did.
I appreciate that.
And I wanted to look good for. No, just because I haven't worn these clothes in a while. It's spring enough.
It looks nice. You're wearing clothes that I wish I could wear. I can't pull it off. I've tried.
Oh, I don't.
I envy you a little bit this morning.
Well, so you're already in one of the 7 deadly sins.
Mm-hmm.
Off to a good start then, right?
Off to a good start. It's a beautiful day. Southern California, it's been cold, but it's a little warmer. It's nice. It's nice that it's warmer because, I don't know about you, but I got destroyed by our gas bill in January, and so we've been keeping the heater off.
I know. Okay, kids, we're just going to bundle up, and the heat's not going on for the rest of the month.
Right? No, totally. We wake up just freezing cold, but it's nice that it's been a little warmer.
I know. It's funny. I'm from Chicago, and to hear that it's cold, and I feel the same way. It has been cold, but I grew up in Chicago and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And but still, my body has acclimated.
How long have you been in California?
Since '97.
Okay, so you fully have gone California soft.
I have, and I feel bad, and but it's a real thing.
Do you go back? Like, is there family or reason to go back?
Yeah. All my family's in Chicagoland area, right. And so I go back and went back for Thanksgiving, and it wasn't too bad.
Oh, okay.
We took a walk around the Forest Preserve, and it was good. And
yeah,
if it's sunny, it's good. So.
Yeah. But your kids were born and raised out here.
Out here.
So it's cold for them when they go back. Like it's foreign.
It is, but since they grew up here, they're like, oh, we want to see the snow. I love the rain.
Yeah.
They love the clouds because there's a little texture.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, yeah, the rain is great. I like it too, but not if it was for months, or if you're in Chicago and it's like February, March, and it's gray and slushy. You're like ready to be done.
Yeah.
So the weather here is fantastic.
Yeah.
Probably why the real estate prices are fantastic too.
Yeah. So I talked to a lot of musicians and writers who have slash jobs, singer slash writer slash composer slash. You also are a big slash guy that I've noticed. It's kind of like pastor slash relationship coach slash therapist.
Yeah.
Give us like an all-encompassing what
so
you do.
You're saying I'm confused. That's what it is.
Multi-talented.
Okay.
The Renaissance man of therapy. So.
Oh, that would be awesome. I'd love. So I was a full-time paid pastor for 16 years, but now I'm full-time therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Shepherd at heart.
Okay.
So that that's not a paid position, but also interested in cryptocurrency, technology, like AI is interesting, scary / interesting.
Yeah.
So how to stay on top of it and utilize it for good.
Right.
And
that chat GTP stuff is crazy.
It can be amazingly useful,
yeah.
and we don't even know all the ramifications yet.
I just put in write a Christmas Eve sermon that ties in how the Grinch stole Christmas with Luke 2, and it wasn't bad.
Ooh,
A
good structure thing to springboard off.
Yeah,
of.
it gave me a 4 bullet point sermon that wasn't terrible. It was a little spooky.
That is So. I always like the new thing. What's like on the fringe.
You want to be first in.
I do.
Yeah.
It's fun to be out there because there's a lot of junk out there, but there's also gold out there.
Right.
And so that's for example like Bitcoin, which was basically the only one way back when it was and I remember reading I read all I could read about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency online. And I couldn't find any more, back in 2013, 2012. And now it's you're inundated. You don't even, you have to sort through it.
Yeah.
So that's an example why I'm interested in technology and ideas.
Yeah.
Ideas. I think I'm idea guy.
I'm that way with musical things. I want to be first in. I want to discover the band before anyone else does. I've always kind of.
That's fun, right? It's fun. It's interesting. You like to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate. Even when I was younger, I was into music like that. Mm-hmm. But then, for whatever reason, other ideas captured me more.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the friends I was around with, they were we would share. That would be a part of our conversation.
Got it. Yeah.
Oh, I found this guy or that, and a lot of it was Christian artists that were good.
The Christian artists that were good, those are hard to find sometimes.
I don't mean to, but they could just be what's like cookie cutter.
Yeah.
And they were,
sure.
like Steve Taylor, the 77s, Charlie Peacock.
All right.
Those that's like older.
Yeah.
But like that sort of vibe feel.
Yeah. So the therapy stuff, the pastor stuff, where did that journey start for you?
This is the answer that I shared because it's the true answer. So I grew up in Wisconsin and then Chicago, and my parents got divorced when I was 16. And that was devastating, like turned my world upside down. And I was like, I never want to feel this pain again like this. So that was the impetus. So I just started learning and studying about relationships. Probably before that too. I mean, I remember reading books on communication and friendship and relationships as a teenager of my own interest. But then that really solidified it. And so it was like, okay, I don't want to feel this pain, and I want to figure out how to make a relationship last forever. So that was a 16-year-old, like, cry, like, God, this sucks.
That's a deep thought for a 16-year-old.
It was a deep pain. So I guess, I was thoughtful or reflective on ideas and relationships. So that was, excuse me, that was a part of why I wanted to become interested in relationships. So I didn't know it was going to be therapy at 16, but that was the journey. Yeah. So it was, that's what I would study. My mentors were related to, relationship stuff and how to make them better and grow in them. Yeah.
You've always, or at least when I say always, the time that I've known you and heard you speak, there's been like a deep connection between therapy and that world and your faith and religious world.
Oh yeah.
Was that always, did you always see them acting together, or were they separate things that came together later?
No, it was, seamless because it came out of my connection with God and others. I mean, the church, my mentors, family, in connection to God. It's a relationship. So I was interested in relationships and how they work. And my relationship with God is the central relationship, right? But they can be woven in with other ones, or gives me comfort when other relationships aren't going well, or wisdom, my connection with God, the Holy Spirit. Or God, what did I do? Or I messed up there, or I'm anxious about this. Connection or lack of connection. So my connection with God was always there, central. And then going to Fuller, that was integrated, like intentionally. So learning distinct fields, but then how they weave together. Yeah,
because that's not always the case that people see them intertwined, that they could be two separate things. I would almost say, I don't know if you've ever gotten this, maybe you have, that your stuff can sound new agey. You know what I mean? Like the way you present it, it could, if you took out the scriptural aspect of it, people could be like, oh, he's this new age guy that believes in probably some Zen practices, the meditation, the yoga, all those things. Like, what is it about Christianity that makes you want to tie that together?
Well, it's the energy of the Christ consciousness. I was just trying to sound as new agey as possible.
What the Holy Spirit does through my ayahuasca is just incredible.
So tell me about that, Eric. Like, does Dave know about this ayahuasca journey you've been on? You were telling me about? No. But to answer your question, why Christ, and how is that differentiated from some of the language I use that could sound like New Age?
Yeah. I think New Age, or just, other religions use similar language in what they do without Christ. So why is Christ important to you in that process?
He is the way that I found life and hope and comfort and deliverance. I mean, that's what salvation means, to be delivered from. Yeah. And so that's the context, the community I was in. That's where I got to know Christ. And just, I think he he is and lives a good, true, and beautiful way.
Mm.
So I'm drawn to, I'm attracted to who Christ is,
Yeah.
was, is, will be,
Yeah.
and such a good source of inspiration, a model. I don't know how, even the language. And sometimes I deliberately use language that is not common to the church, because if you use the same language of any subculture, it gets like, you just hear it. It just becomes like wallpaper.
People might have a preconceived notion of what that means, and it might not be what you're intending for that moment.
Or even just, I want them to like wake up to hear something fresh. Not, it could be from me, but just like tune into what is possible in the presence of God in this moment.
Yeah.
Because if you've been a part of any family or culture for a long time, you say the same words over and over, and they lose their poignancy.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we just went on a men's retreat together, and you did a session for the guys, and I was taking video and stuff like that, and I was really moved by you just asked them to write down what their gratitude towards God.
Yeah.
And it was like almost immediate tears for some guys. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What is that about that? What do you notice that not just men, us as humans in general, are missing in the process? And that's not something that you go to church every week and the guy says, write down what you're thankful for. That, you know what I mean?
Right.
Why are those practices so impactful for people?
Or maybe what you just to springboard off what you just said, because we don't do it that frequently, that could be a component. Also, I was thinking about that because I wasn't sure how the guys would respond.
Yeah.
But that was Saturday morning. They had time to connect Friday night. We had a lot of fun and goofiness and just playfulness Friday night. Saturday morning, and the context was connecting. I know I taught about like the presence of God right here, right now. God is a source of love. He is love. So trying to really warm that part of ourselves up, that part of our brain, to connect. You connect to somebody who you perceive is there for you. So that's what I wanted, and I think that is what people experience. Then they went into gratitude, expressing this to somebody, to God.
Yeah.
So they're expressing it relationally to God, and that does something in the brain. I mean, you warm up that part of our brain, and it can open us up to feeling things that we haven't felt. And if guys, that's a safe place, safe enough, if they were in tune with some tears or just thankful for their family or whatever they were thankful for.
Right. The first part of that, just knowing the stories of the guys around the tables sometimes. The first part of that is hard for some people, that believing that God is actually there for them.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you are thinking of situations in your life as the outcome of God being there or not, it can often feel like God's not there for you. Is that something you've encountered with people?
Oh, yeah. People are either angry or sad or disconnected because they don't want to be angry or sad to God. So some are okay with it, some are not. So then, well, how can my life turn out like this if God was really present with me? And then the way they think God will be with them shapes if they think God could just instantaneously change something and he didn't, then they could be angry or sad that God didn't do that.
Right.
And then I want to draw out how God is with us as a comfort, as a support, as an inspiration, as a kind of like loving truth teller, like, oh, be strong and courageous in this way. What you see the Holy Spirit, like, and through Scripture, reminding men and women throughout. Like, that's how I want them to. That's why I kind of draw out how has God been with you, and if you have missed seasons of life where He hasn't been with you because you didn't perceive it. Yeah. Because I think if you're a Christian, you're in this scene. You think, I know God's with me. Like it's kind of a basic belief that we have.
Right.
but experientially we're disconnected from it.
Right. Yeah. So recently I actually want this podcast to do something, which means you have to like post on social media, right?
Okay.
So I've been on posting on TikTok more and pulling clips, and that's why we have cameras and all that nonsense. But when I started posting my stuff, then my feed became a lot of Christianity. And like it's shocking to me because, you know, when I work at this church, I'm exposed to mostly what we're doing at this church.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
It is shocking how many pastors and churches are. I mean, I guess prosperity gospel is the way to put it, but just more plainly, if you do this, then you do this, and if you're not getting this from God, then you're not doing this. There was one pastor the other day that I just heard say, God doesn't want you in an extramarital affair as much as he doesn't want you in poverty. You're like, what? Like what? There's so many factors. There's so many things.
Yeah.
But it is ingrained in us to a certain point, depending on how we grew up and what other pastors were saying, that if life isn't going well, then I've upset God in some way. There's a direct correlation between those things. Not my choices or not what I've done, but what God is or isn't doing for me. And that moment at men's retreat of just those I am statements that, you know, I love you, I am, whatever those statements were, that was the opening point.
The meditation about hearing God speak to you. Yeah. Scripturally informed, like I am love. Basically, it's using 1 Corinthians 13, saying like, I'm never abrasive nor sarcastic. Right. I'm always with you. Right. Yeah, that was to Prime. So there was, before the gratitude, we did a meditation on God's character. Right.
God's character, though, I was shocked by how much I saw God's character misused or misrepresented as I'm waiting for you to do the right thing so that I can bless you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that just, to me, like that's the starting point of like throwing everything off course.
Yeah.
And that's easily a God that you can stop believing in, because the second things go wrong in your life, you're like, what the heck? What did I do?
Yes.
That's a tough place for people, I think.
That makes me think about the knowledge that our connection or our attachment is a therapeutic term. I mean, it's an English word, but there's deep research on psychology about attachment, and our attachment to our parents. They are our first structures of all powerful beings, aka God. So our connection and attachment to our parents it's the biggest shaper of how we attach to God.
Totally. Yeah. No, I fully believe that. Yeah. I've seen that in my life and in other people's lives for sure. Yeah.
So you can see then, the default, we could assume the default of our attachment to God is like our attachment to our parents. The powerful thing is there can be healing and transformation of that attachment. It takes quietness, reflection, awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, embedded in truth and reality of who God is and who we are. And I guess part of it is just honesty of, actually, this is shaping my attachment to God.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I had parents that loved me and love me still unconditionally. A dad that was around and provided and all those things. So when people say God loves you unconditionally, I go, yeah, well, I get that.
Yes, right.
I've experienced that. I know what that feels like.
Yes.
And I've seen other people that's a remarkable statement that they've never experienced a love like this because of the same thing. They didn't have parents. It's crazy. So speaking of parents, you're a parent.
I am.
You do a lot of your ministry and work with your wife.
Yes.
How did you guys meet? How did this working together situation start?
We met in a class at Fuller, and so we were both in the same cohort at Marriage Family Therapy program. Yeah. And so officially we met sometime September 1999. And then there's like 30 of us that traveled together took 80% of our classes together. So we were classmates. Then we studied in a smaller group together. And so then we were close friends. And then we started dating, which is its own story and journey. And then we got married actually while we were still students at Fuller. And then
the classic Fuller love tale.
yes, the classic. Yes, yeah. There's moments of our relationship are flashing that I'm like, I don't know if those are classic. Just the natural moments that are challenging in relationships.
Sure.
But then so that's how we met. And then you asked, how did we start working together?
Yeah.
Even when I was a pastor, and she was a therapist part-time, we would do things together at church and all over, because churches would invite us or invite her to speak, and so we would do things together. And there's a dynamic that when two people are together, we model something. We model a relationship.
Yeah, sure.
A good enough relationship. And I think that's something. So we believe we teach valuable things, but then I tell Sangshim, I believe our relationship is like the core essence of what we're teaching, because they get to see it and feel it. And even in our presentation, we're not perfect. I mean, we're just us.
Yeah.
And you get to see like irritations or banter or friendly. And so our relationship is a model of a relationship working. And we say the beginning part of our relationship was really challenging.
Right.
The first couple of years. But not because we have master's degrees and are licensed therapists, but because we actually earned the quality of our relationship. And that's what we teach from. We went to therapy, we went to workshops, we invested time and money.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to convey to people. All relationships are built on learnable skills. That's I think core thing and that's even your relationship with God, your spouse, your kids, extended family friendships.
Yeah.
All relationships are built on learnable skills.
Dive into that more. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. So this is like, there's a science part of it. And I was thinking about this, the science of like, just appreciate people, give thanks, you know what I mean? Verbalize what you're grateful to the people in your life, your wife, your husband, your kids, your pastor, whoever, your boss.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that complicated. What I'm starting off with. That seems bait. Like everybody would think, yeah, that's a good ingredient for good relationships.
Yeah.
So let's just start there. And that's embedded in scripture. That's embedded in church practices over thousands of years. Any good community does some form of gratitude.
Right.
To God, to each other.
Yeah.
So it's not that part's not that complicated. And good communities structure time together around that.
Yeah.
On Sundays, you give thanks to God. You can connect with people during that time. You connect with them. So that's one place to start. Then there's various levels of what do you do when you have feelings that you don't like these people, that you love.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
You're irritated or frustrated or sad.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? So that some of the relational skills, I just made up a word, relationshipal.
Relationshipal. Trademarked.
Those skills are personal self-regulation or regulation with God or journaling. You got to do some of your own work before you dump it on your partner. And why aren't they responding appropriately in whatever our perception is? So some of that we do through journaling, through prayer, through reflection on, why am I so agitated about this?
Yeah.
Reflect on it, pray about it in a thoughtful way, and then you can convey like, I experienced some connection with God. This is what was going on. And one thing that we coined with Sangshim and Jim Wilder, who we co-wrote a book with, was if you don't experience some peace with God, you'll demand it from your partner. And you can see that if you reflect, I'm really frustrated that my partner's not responding in a certain way. Yeah, I'm not perfect, but like they should at least respond this way. Whatever, that's the generic like principle. But can I do a little work? Like, I am agitated with them or frustrated or angry or sad. And can I talk to God about that before I just like demand that they respond a certain way? And so that's a little more, thoughtful or more challenging aspect. Like giving thanks, that makes sense. That's easy. Everyone can do that. This one everyone can do, but most of us haven't been modeled or taught how to do that.
Right.
How to handle our anger and anxiety, for example.
Right.
What's our process to do that? And those are skills that we can do internally and relationally.
Whenever I am presented like with new practices of gratitude or whatever, I always feel bad at the beginning because it feels forced. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's right.
But I feel like that's probably a natural thing, and it's always going to feel forced at the beginning until it becomes natural.
That's good. Yes, I would if I could, because I like language. It's only forced if like someone's making you do it.
Sure.
Okay, so that's the thing. It can definitely feel. So if you agree to do it.
Yeah, I guess by forced I mean contrived. It feels inauthentic at the beginning to me.
I get it, and I really get the experience of it. I'm even nuancing some of the language because what you tell yourself. Yeah. So sorry, I didn't mean to like.
No, please.
So but I think because I hear that people say that, so there's no force if you're invited. Contrived. It is structured.
Yeah.
So I think about like my son plays tennis and my daughter plays soccer, and when they're learning a new skill, they have to do it in a unique way that is, it's like 1, 2, 3, right? Holding the grip in a new way. Right. Or kicking with your left foot or your weaker foot. Or swinging a golf club. If you've never swung a golf club, to swinging a golf club, that is forced or contrived. It's really awkward. Yeah. It really is. But then there's people who really like it and can be more skillful at it. Right. So that's how I look at it. It's just a process of learning. And it's like creating a new habit. You have to do structured steps to the point where eventually you can do it with finesse and ease, and it just feels a natural part of you. So I totally honor where you're coming from. And you're right. Maybe that's a good thing for whenever we're learning, we can tell ourselves or even people that we're drawing into it is... It's going to feel like awkward. It's going to feel awkward because it is like very 1, 2, 3. It isn't natural. It's not authentic yet. Right. For sure. So yeah, the gratitude, like the interactive gratitude, whatever it is, so you still do it. Why do you do it? I guess that's like, if it feels, because it seems like contrived or inauthentic is something that you'd move away from. Yeah. But you still do a practice for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, I've always had a high level of trust in people who are experts in their field, right? Okay. So like when I go to the doctor, whatever the doctor tells me, I roll with it. I don't like try to Google my own answer, and I just, you're the doctor, you tell me what to do. Sure, right. So when someone like you tells me, hey, gratitude's going to really change, I'll do it. Yes. Even if it feels forced.
Because there's a level of trust.
There's a level of trust, and I don't want to go learn and research how to feel more gratitude in my life.
That's right. You're telling me, so you're saying it works. Let's go for it.
Yeah. And until it doesn't work, obviously. But like, I guess that's why if somebody who I trust and I think is more skilled in something, then I roll with it and just try it. And
that's good. I wanted to draw that out. So like the level of trust and then the perceived competency.
Perceived competency is probably the biggest thing.
That's what you would trust in, their perceived competency. Yeah, that's good. And that's how we can gain wisdom, that you don't have to go do all the same research that I did into this. Sure. You can borrow it, test it out, and if it's effective, then you continue. Sure. Yeah, and if it's not, you stop or you do something else.
Yeah, which, man, I wasn't planning on going down this rabbit hole this quickly, but like a big part of my life right now is deconstruction is like such a, it's a hot button word.
Should we say demolish instead?
Demolish. No, just kidding. Set fire to, the ideas and the beliefs and biblical and whatnot that I grew up with, really looking at them and deciding what I believe in, because when I was growing up, I had such extreme trust and belief in my youth pastors. When I look back on it now, I was like, I was 16 and they were like 23. They didn't know. No, seriously. They didn't know everything. Yeah. But that level of competency that I perceived and the trust that I have, and I just took it all in and didn't question it.
Yes.
And there was girls there and they were feeding me pizza and it was fun to be around all those
multifaceted
things. But you know what I mean? Like I realized at some point I actually have to start kind of deconstructing and looking at these things because I think I had too much faith in what they were telling me.
It was the weight was a bit too much for what it could actually carry.
Yeah, for sure. And they weren't competent.
Yeah, right. No, they're doing their best. Let's assume they're like good people with good character.
Absolutely.
They're doing their best, but like that's not their area of competency.
Yeah.
I thank God for all the youth pastors and leaders out there, because like that is, I can play an outside role, but thank you for your work.
right. No, for sure. Okay, back on track with relationships. After I took that tangent.
Oh no, I like that. We could go there, but we'll go back to relationship and we'll go where it goes.
So you do workshops and stuff with your wife, Sungshim, and I think it's important for people to know that you're always in a state of growth together. Also, are there times that you're at home and you're like, oh man, we just did a workshop on this and we're not really doing it well right now? Or you're in a workshop going, wait a minute, we haven't been doing this. You know what I mean?
Well, yes. I do know what you mean. No, we have it together. That's what I want to. We have it all together. No, that's not even how we display it, because we're like, continually learning and growing, and we display that as an act of service for people, because we're like, hey, we're on this journey. We do say like we are in a really good place compared to 20 years ago, 5 years ago, and we're continually growing, but we still, there's times when we have like blow-ups or frustrating conversations.
Yeah.
And that's ongoing. I'll highlight the growth, which is, it's kind of rupture and repair. That's the theme that I'm thinking about. That's what makes a good relationship, is not that there are no ruptures.
Yeah.
Like that's an impossibility. But when there are ruptures, you can quiet yourself and then you can come back and repair or reconnect with your partner. Like that thread, if you do that hundreds of times or thousands of times, there's a deep bond. And that is something that Sungchim and I can rely on, because we include friends. I mean, so it's good to not only rely on your spouse, but like, hey, talk to a friend who is for your relationship. That's a important qualifier.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is frustrating. I can't believe she's like that, or why is John like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, they hear me out. They take kind of some of the edge off, take some of the charge off, and then a reminder of the goodness of who we are. You do that with God too. Like, okay, you express it to God, get the comfort and support from Him, and then you go and reconnect with I connect with Sungshim.
Yeah.
Oh no, we've had that all happen before a seminar, during lunch of a seminar, after a seminar.
Yeah.
I mean, like at some of the most inopportune times. Oh yeah, some of those moments are really hard, and it would be almost like if you could, the making of the seminar, you would see like the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And when I see clients or just friends, I'm like, like we present ourselves like, hey, we're doing okay. Even if we're not, but then we just have to remember everybody has something they're suffering with.
Yeah.
Even that perceived person, whoever it is, usually it's like a wealthier person who's at a top of their field that looks like they have it all together, and I wish I had that place, or that amount of money, or that relationship, or that number of kids, or the kids that go to whatever that school. But they have something that they're suffering with that it feels really heavy and weighty to them too, and they wish it didn't exist.
Right.
And so that's part of what it means to be human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we know how to receive comfort from God, from community, that's, I think, like a beautiful way to live. It's not the elimination of that. That's just not feasible.
Yeah. You've been doing it over a pretty long chunk of time, ministry and therapy. When you meet with people, when you meet with couples, are the themes the same over those periods of time? or do they change based on how culture and the times are changing, or do you pretty much see the same themes over the life of your ministry?
That's good question. And I think it's what I perceive is through what I'm learning, through what Sungshim and I are learning. People, we study a lot on trauma, and I want to define trauma because it's a big word and it's used a lot. And to me, it's used all the time, but I don't know what people, if it's in the common culture or not, because my Instagram feed or my YouTube feed is like healing from trauma. So I see it from trauma, and trauma is chronic disruption of connection. That's a simple, so in some ways, like we experienced that growing up in terms of what did my mom or dad know, like, oh, that was a hard season, 7th grade or 2nd grade or 12th grade, whatever it is. So that's informing, like, were people there for me in different moments in my life? There were moments that it didn't happen. Now I'm married and my spouse is not there for me, and it touches a wound that is there. And so I'm demanding, why aren't you a better person?
Yeah.
And so that's a big theme that we see it.
Yeah.
Other themes that we see in relationships are some male and female dynamics of women going to work and being a mom and a wife, and they do more housework even if both people are working full time.
Right.
For example, and I don't think us guys always recognize that, or housework could be even just like cooking and preparing lunches and basic stuff like that. And then the discrepancy there, and not acknowledging that and having a agreed upon way of just dividing up labor.
Sure.
Those are, so it's really like, can we be there for each other?
I remember when I was doing premarital class before I got married, and it was with Pastor Dave, and he said, I recommend you never say these two statements. I'm helping with the chores, as if it's your job, and I'm helping.
I'm helping you out.
Or I'm watching the kids. Like, I have to watch babysitting the kids.
Yeah, that's cringe.
You don't babysit your own kids, and you don't help with the chores.
Yes. I hope he was equal opportunity with the women.
Oh, totally.
Okay,
no, it was whoever takes on whichever role, the other one can't be saying this. Yeah.
So this is to honor, even today where there's a lot more opportunity for men and women.
Yeah.
This still exists. And then the thing that I see, good men who love God, love their wives and their kids, societally wise, just we don't have the same relational support and developed capacity over you. I think we can.
Yeah.
But just we have different experiences, and even what's expected of a man to not cry and stuff like that. And that starts from when we're really young.
Yeah.
So then, if we can't cry when we're 6 or 10 or 12 or 16, then we're more dull to things that we're feeling, and then we're probably more dull to our spouse,
right?
The things they're feeling,
right.
And to have compassion and patience for the men developing, and also while the man to take responsibility to grow.
Right.
That is actually a theme, is can we take responsibility for our own personal growth and not demand that our spouse. This is a story that I was complaining to my mentor, and he loved Sungshim and I and coached us and trained us in relationship skills, and I was telling him a story of how Sungshim was terrible. And in this case, she really was terrible. I mean, by that, I just mean she was saying like mean things, just stuff that we do when we're mad.
Sure.
And that's one way. And I was probably because I didn't take initiative or neglected to do something. Her sin was worse. That's all I want to convey in this podcast.
Yeah, sure.
Probably not, or both were. But I could see hers, and I was like, Edward, like Sungshim is this, and she said these mean things, and this, and she's not doing that. And then my mentor said, it sounds like you want her to change so your life is easier. I said, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so his way of inviting me to say, like, John, why don't you grow, focus on your growth,
right,
your connection to God, and doing what the next right step for you, instead of focusing on changing your spouse and tattletaling on how she's bad.
Right.
And so I think that is the way to growth, is through truth and taking responsibility for our own healing. And that doesn't mean like, oh, we got to whip ourselves into shape, because I know that's how it could potentially sound. It's like, no, maybe you get therapy, or maybe you go talk to a pastor,
Right.
or a friend, or a mentor.
Right.
So can we be a part of? This is another statement I'm thinking about, is you're not responsible for what happened to you in life, like especially under 20.
Yeah.
I mean, like the way you were parented and the way that people taught you about God and relationships, that you were just thrust in that context.
Yeah.
But now we are responsible to experience healing and hope in the areas where we have been wounded. So there's compassion embedded in that, and there's also an invitation, or hopefully an inspiration, like you can actually heal and grow and be transformed and experience like a more freedom and lightness to life.
Right, right. Are there things as culture changes that you see become common themes? You know, for instance, I was talking to a youth pastor, and he was showing me stats of how you can mark an increase in teen suicide with the invention of the iPhone. You know, things like that.
Right.
Access to pornography is crazy. Access to affairs is crazy. Even things like the political landscape has changed and become so hateful. Do you see like outside things in culture when they shift, that they seep into relationships in that way?
You know what? That definitely does occur, and maybe the way I would frame it is, I don't pay as much of attention to that in terms of how it impacts the relationship. I focus on what are the small steps they can take. But I think you're acknowledging almost like the pain reliever that are accessible to people. So I'll say like access to pornography would be like a way that an individual could access pain relief temporarily. That would be destructive.
Right.
Also, the legalization of marijuana, which like I think there's good reasons for it, but that means more people will access it as a pain reliever.
Got it. Yeah.
As an escape from reality. So like, okay, I see that.
Right.
You know, iPhone, how like, you could say we're in the Matrix, but we're not in a pod.
Yeah.
But just the pod is attached to me all the time.
No, for sure.
That's sort of like, that's a detachment from the person who's right in front of you.
Right. My weekly screen time thing pops up on Sunday mornings, and I'm just disgusted with myself.
Yes.
Every week. Like,
yes.
Every week I gotta do better with that. But yeah, it is an escape sometimes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yes. And so those are the ways that I see that people can access it. And then, okay, this is something I tell my kids. So maybe there are companies that spend millions of dollars figuring out how to hack our brains so that we spend more attention on what they want.
Yes.
And I'm susceptible to this too.
Yeah.
And so then it's, how do we create some space? And it's silence and solitude is an antidote to that. And you can see how challenging it is for myself and people to experience silence and solitude deliberately. Yeah. Just to create space so that I'm not controlled by a company that wants to make me
get better at that so bad. I'm so bad at that. I have to figure out where I heard this, because I need to start giving credit to whoever actually said it.
Just take credit.
Take credit. But I was hearing somebody, it might have even been in one of Dave's sermons, I forget, somebody talking about how conquest used to be about lands and territories, and now that on earth is pretty much all settled, that our individual time is the new wild west. It's the new frontier to conquer, that they're trying to conquer every second of our lives and our time. So if they can figure out manipulative ways to keep me on that app and keep me scrolling, then they're making money, whatever. But there's no more lands to conquer. Our time is the next thing that people are trying to conquer.
Time, attention. So if you think about, like, attention is the best gift we can give a person or anything, a project. And so that's how what I see in culture impacting relationships, and how do we take back our attention and devote it to what we want.
Yeah.
And even think, where do you want to be in 5 years and 10 years? Or a common one that I use for premarital couples, so depending how old you are, what would you want your 50th wedding anniversary to look like? Who's there? Where is it? A picnic? Is it on a cruise ship? Is it in your mansion? Is it in your cottage? Just picture that.
Yeah.
And then chart your course of life to the best degree that you're humbly able to towards that. And probably being on Instagram Reels is not a big part of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then even thinking about we're either consuming or we're creating. And creating doesn't mean you create songs and the musical and stuff like that. I'm saying creating a moment with somebody. So that helps me am I consuming or am I creating? Because consuming is easy. It's frictionless or very little friction. Creating is arduous at times.
Yeah.
It's joyful and beautiful, but sometimes it's especially in the launching phase.
Yeah.
It is hard, painful, difficult to create. And so I want us to be people who are creating or co-creating with God and God's people.
Right.
Let's co-create something beautiful.
Yeah, when we're scrolling, we're looking at outcomes, not the creation. And
right.
So we start fantasizing about the outcome instead of actually doing the work of the creating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there things, so we talked about deconstruction a little bit and defined it a little bit, which, by the way, I really want to reclaim that word. I feel like there are words that, and this is not a left-right thing. I think both sides of the aisle do this, conservative, liberal, whatever, inside Christianity and politics, where you come up with a word, like this happened with woke, where at the beginning it was a really powerful, meaningful, let's wake up to these things that we're not seeing.
Right.
And then the other side takes it and redefines it as the most radical version of what that means and turns it into a joke so that you can never use the word in a meaningful way again. Right.
Yes.
And I feel like that's happening with deconstruction. That it's turning into this new wave of Christians wants to get rid of everything that's ever been said and make their own thing. No,
it's the straw man argument.
Exactly. Totally. It's a straw man. Exactly. And so I kind of want to reclaim the word because it's been such a meaningful part of my journey the last 5 years or so. Yeah. And it's just looking back at everything I've been taught with the understanding that it probably wasn't all perfectly accurate.
For sure.
And parsing through.
Yeah.
But, and the thought that we can never be perfectly accurate about an infinite God anyway. So why not go through and see what still makes sense to me at 40, what made sense to me at 20. I think that's a very normal act to do.
I would hope so, actually, because I think of that process of we could even define deconstruction, but you're saying looking at the things we believed, why we believed them, and how do we see it now? Yes. To me, that just sounds like learning. Yeah, sure. You know what I mean? It's so I would hope people continue to learn.
Yeah. So under that premise,
yes.
What are things since you started ministry that maybe you taught or believed at the beginning that you've kind of changed your mind about or thought of in a different light? Are there things that you look back and go, I kind of wish not that I hadn't taught that, but I feel a little bit differently about that now?
Wow, that's a good question. I got to figure out what I'm going to answer on this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? But nothing pops up instantaneously. I think I was much more definitive on, even how I think about heaven and hell is different and who's going where. Yeah. I think I think when I was younger, it was clear cut.
Yeah, that's my big one. Right. I mean, we can just get on the same page with
right,
that right away.
It was clear cut. And then I really like what Dallas Willard says. I don't want to I don't want to misrepresent him. He said something like, God will let anybody who wants to be in heaven in heaven. And I think that's kind of where I land. And that you could make that case for even a very classic conservative Christian point of view is, if somebody wants to be in heaven, then they confess their sins to Jesus as their Lord and Savior, and they're in.
Right.
Even that, like in, out, like that, it's not how I see it, feel it. It's like, what's the kind of life I want to live here and now?
Right.
And I want to attach myself to the source of all goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And in my perception, that's Christ, God through Christ.
Yeah.
That I want to learn from him through Scripture. And the Sermon on the Mount I think the Sermon on the Mount and the life of Christ is more important to me now than when I was younger. When I was younger, it's more like the Bible.
Yeah.
And God.
Sure.
But now it's like, okay, actually Christ, the life of Christ, and my attachment to his presence becoming more like that, that is more central. And I think I would be, I see things more clearly.
Yeah.
And not, instead of like, am I going to church? Am I saying the right words?
Right.
Versus like, does my life resonate with and look like Christ is alive in me?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I think the church in general, like, really likes saying it's not for us to judge, it's for God to judge, but then, like, we really judge.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Well, then even judge is the word of, like, we need to judge in terms of, like, discern and make a posture of how we're going to live. We have to judge, like, what direction we're going.
Yeah.
And then the judgmental attitude, that's, we don't want that.
Right.
I mean, that's not, but I have that for sure.
Yeah. No, I think my big one growing up was I grew up in such a small Christian bubble that I thought that everyone outside of Christianity was like living this tortured life.
Right.
Like, how could they possibly cope with life if they weren't praying or they weren't receiving these blessings from God?
Yeah.
And then I got out of college and started meeting people outside the bubble going, you're a really good person and your life is fine. Like,
yeah, right.
Oh, like, okay, how do I then reconcile this thought that all these people were tormented and going to hell?
Yes.
With the fact that they're actually better people than me.
Right. No, that's another thing that I think I really learned a lot from Jim Wilder about. What does it mean to be connected to God, and what does it mean to be mature as a human being? Mm-hmm. And we could draw that out. You could just read his book, Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You. And the point is, there are some people who don't believe in God, and on a human level, they are more mature than me.
Yeah.
And so mature meaning like they can take care of themselves and others, and they can be more thoughtful. Because of just life circumstances, maybe the family they grew up in was more stable.
Yeah.
And they don't know God in an explicit sense.
Yeah, sure.
And so just even being honest about that, because I think I kind of resonate with where you came from. I'm like, oh, if you don't know this, then how can you be a full human being?
Right.
And then it's like, well, actually, there are people who are mature in some capacity more than those who express Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior.
Yeah. And then, that becomes is that because God is in all things, they've just experienced him in a different way than I have, through creation, through relationship, in a different way. I don't, I'm trying to figure out what I really think about how all of that interacts and works. It's hard for me to fathom, because we've talked about past wounds. We've talked about brain psychology and the way our brains are formed and all those things. It's just hard for me to fathom that grace doesn't cover all of that in the end. That there's so much out of our control in how we act and how we respond because of things that have happened to us, because of our DNA, because of shortcomings in our brain or differences in our brains. I can't fathom being held accountable to this life in that way, and that grace won't cover all of those things. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And if there is some kind of differentiation, I don't know what it is, and I don't think I'm ever going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I lean into where you are. I think less about that stuff now than I used to.
Right.
And more about, how do I live the way Jesus lived?
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you talk about grace, I really like Dallas Willard. Grace is not merely forgiveness of sins, that's included. It is like the power, it's like the power to become. It's the power from God to do the things He called you to do.
Yeah.
It's like a fuel. It's an energy. It's a source of life.
Yeah.
That we can cooperate with. So, and then even thinking about, if I grew up in this family, but then someone grew up in a more stable family, then the parents are still together.
Mm-hmm.
Can we be? I was just thinking about the individualistic nature that we typically think through these things versus can we be a community of people who are being transformed? So not just John becoming more like Christ, but John and Eric and Montrose Church and then the web of relationships. Are we trending towards? Is the trajectory more towards the essence of who Christ is in us?
Yeah, for sure.
Then so that's freeing to think. Then okay, then I can cover some people. Like even Sungshim and I, we cover each other. We have different strengths and weaknesses, and we support each other. And if I demanded that Sungshim have all her strengths and my strengths because I can see where she lacks,
right? That's
unnecessary and too heavy, and vice versa. But together we're like more of a whole of a person, just the two of us cooperating. And then can John and Sungshim and Eric and other people from church or whoever agree to head in this direction,
right?
Can we be that presence?
Yeah.
And it means something tangibly. It's not just this like nebulous presence.
Right.
We can concretize what that looks like.
Right. I love it. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I just want to end with, what is your hope moving forward for your ministry, for your life? What is your hope in the stuff that you're going to be doing moving forward?
Yes, my hope is that people would realize that change is possible. All relationships are built on learnable skills. And the way you learn is through maybe a series of experiments. Which means if you do an experiment, it could go wrong, quote unquote. But I want people to just go out and experiment in the right direction with wisdom from people who have gone before. And that's what Sungshim and I want to be like that. But we're learning from people who have gone before us.
Right.
So go experiment, try new things in the relational way. And I have a heart also for people who are entrepreneurial, small businesses or whatever, just going and trying things, or artists, like anybody who does that. Like if I learn about that, I want them to know I support them. And so but I want to support you. Oh, you want to like, even appreciating wives, or like, since I'm talking to a lot of male clients, go say, text them what you're grateful for. Like they feel awkward about it.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like you were saying that it's different.
It's awkward at first. Yeah.
It's awkward at first. Anything good or bad, it will be awkward.
Yeah.
But just go for it. Give it a try. Do your own experiments and test the fruit. And if the fruit is good, continue in that direction. That is my blessing and hope and prayer.
Awesome. How can people follow along with you, what you got going on?
Great.
All that.
So we have LoppnowRelationshipCenter.com. That's our therapy one, which we're doing things. And we're going to do this. We've done various coaching, but we're focusing on coaching for couples who are Christians. I mean, we're explicitly Christian, but they can be whatever they are. They probably have to be at least spiritual. That's where we're doing it. We also have a ministry, presenceandpractice.com, where we do podcast and ministry events on occasion, and we're invited. So those are the two primary ones.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Eric.
Dude, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate you.
It was fun. Thank you.